What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake and Kyle coming back at you today to talk about what happened, Kyle, last week, and what happened in the Thanksgiving week of football. And I can tell you for sure one thing, Kyle. I sat or laid and watched more football this weekend than I probably have in years. It feels good to be back here in front of the camera. I have a different chair because my back is still all not 100%, but we're feeling better, Kyle. We're diving into week 13 here pretty soon. But before we do that, we got to go back and look at week 12 to really figure out kind of what happened. So like usual, there's going to be timestamps down below, Kyle, but let's go ahead and kick it off with some Sduds, some of our stud players that just dudded for us at a very inopportune time, right? Because the fantasy playoffs are right around the corner. A lot of people fighting for position right now. Not the time that you really want your studs to underperform.
We never want studs.
Yeah, true.
But when we're going into the playoffs, maybe you were looking to secure a spot, like you were right there. But I did. In Discord, I named this, instead of calling it week 12, I'm going to call it the week of injuries and meaningless touchdowns from players we don't care about.
I mean, if we could fit that many characters into a YouTube title, I would even contemplate putting it on there.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it is. We saw some touchdowns from some guys. And we'll talk about a few of them here in just a minute. But yeah, we'll start off with this Sduds here. Let's go with Tony Pollard right off the bat. Now, Tony Pollard had been absolutely crushing it, even with Zeke Elliott back in the lineup. We sent the start-sit video that, listen, Jerry Jones loves him some Zeke, right? So if Zeke is healthy, Zeke is going to play. Well, Tony Pollard still had 20 touches, Kyle. If I had to tell you every week that Tony Pollard's going to get 20 touches, more times than not, your tail's going to start wagging a little bit.
It is right now.
I'll take your word for it, because this past week, though, he only had 62 total yards with 20 total touches. That is not going to cut it. Slightly better than Dalvin Cook, another guy we could talk about there from Thanksgiving Day. He had 22 carries, Kyle. Dalvin Cook with 22 carries? Sign me up for that.
Give it to me.
Love it.
Give it to me, baby.
42 yards on the ground on 22 carries. Added 5 targets, 4 receptions, and 14 yards. Did a whole lot of nothing out there. Dameon Pierce. Another dud week for Dameon Pierce. You see him? Where's he at? He's gone, done, disappeared.
Damian!
No, he's gone.
Lost you.
Yeah, he's gone. He had 11 total yards. Now, I had him ranked outside of my top 20 this week because I knew that, come on, this Miami Dolphins defense is not going to be stopped by Houston, but I was hoping maybe for a little bit more. It felt like they went up 21-0 in the first quarter, and Dameon Pierce had no opportunity whatsoever to do anything. Mike Evans had a downer game. I mean, mostly because Chris Godwin was taking all of it. But Mike Evans had 9 targets, Kyle. That's what we're looking for. 9 targets a week. I'll take that for Mike Evans.
Yeah.
You know what he did with that? 2 catches for 31 yards.
So what we're saying so far is the volume was there, except for Dameon Pierce.
Yeah.
But the results were not.
And, watching that game in Tampa Bay, there was like 2 or 3 deep balls that were like just barely over the outstretched hands of Mike Evans. I mean, we were on the verge of huge game Mike Evans and just barely missed it a few times. Travis Etienne was a disappointment, but more so because of injury, right? All of a sudden, we're getting touchdowns and a buttload of yards from Jermichael Hasty in that backfield. He only had 3 yards before being injured. Christian McCaffrey, only 49 total yards in a game in which they lose Elijah Mitchell to injury. At first, I was like, you know what, maybe, because there's rumors coming out now that Christian McCaffrey not 100% healthy either. We're kind of trying to get more information on that, but he still played a full set of snaps. So it's not like he was just completely limited and gone by halftime. What about Christian Kirk? Another guy with the volume, Kyle. He had 9 targets, turned it into 4 catches and 46 yards in a game in which Trevor Lawrence threw for 321 yards. Hardly any of it was going to Christian Kirk. Seems like Zay Jones was a name that we were looking at a lot this past week, and we'll talk about him here in just a few minutes too.
Jamal Agnew had a touchdown.
Yeah, that's a bad day when Jamal Agnew has a touchdown. Yeah. What about Deebo Samuel? Now, he had 7 targets, 3 catches, 43 yards, but only 2 carries for 0 yards. And it's starting to come to fruition, Kyle. When we talked about Christian McCaffrey, when you did the breaking news video about, hey, I'm a little bit more worried for the touches in the backfield for Deebo, Now, all of a sudden, that ceiling's just not there because the touches aren't there in the backfield.
Yeah, no, he was definitely the one that I said, if anyone's affected by this trade, it's going to be Debo. Now, the good news moving forward might be that if Christian McCaffrey's limited and Elijah Mitchell does have a sprained MCL, which is what Kyle Shanahan said he thought it was, we're probably going to see a little bit more Debo Samuel in the background. So there's still light at the end of the tunnel with him. But I mean, he's a guy that for the first time in quite some time, I had him outside my top 20 wide receivers this week.
Yeah, that's crazy. How about Alvin Kamara? Another guy. I'm pretty sure this is 4 straight now, Kyle, with Alvin Kamara in the dud category. At this point, maybe going forward, I don't even know if he makes the dud category.
He did fumble at the goal line. It would be a completely different situation, probably, if he doesn't fumble it. But it counts anyway.
But he still only had 14 total touches for 19 total yards.
Yep.
So I don't even know if that touchdown puts him into double digits at this point. It was just another ugly day for Alvin Kamara. George Kittle, seen a lot of San Francisco 49ers come up in here. 4 targets, 3 catches for 26 yards. Not what you really want from George Kittle. Overall, not a ton of duds, but some very important ones in week 12. But Kyle, let's go ahead and let's move on down to let's go to our misses next, Kyle. Let's go to our misses next. So this one is a little rough because I have to take a miss on Mac Jones. Now, I don't know if anyone was going to start Mac Jones. Like, I don't know if anybody out there is really contemplating starting Mac Jones. But I did have him listed as a sit. Dude went out and threw for 28 to 39 for 382 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interception. So I missed on Mac Jones. Jimmy G, another one. 26 to 37 for 221 and 1 touchdown. One more touchdown would have been great. The safe floor continues to be there for Jimmy G. The ceiling, though, is what's going to be kind of hit and miss here as of late. Brian Robinson from the running back position. I mentioned in the running back start sit video that this backfield for me is almost impossible to figure out because it's like every other week is another guy. It's either B-Rob or Antonio Gibson. This past week, it was Brian Robinson, had 18 carries for 105 yards, added in 2 receptions for 20 yards and a touchdown, and was running like a grown man on the field.
Really?
Donta Foreman, I had him listed as a Verge sit. I mean, he was 24 carries for 113 yards. So it's not like he absolutely killed it, but he did break 10 fantasy points. And then Devin Singletary, I was hoping for a little bit more than 14 carries for 72 yards from Devin Singletary. This past week, didn't get it. He's a miss as well.
And who would have known that Mike White was the key to Garrett Wilson going off? Who would have thought that?
Yeah.
I mean, that says a lot about Zach Wilson, I think, and where his current stance is with the organization. I mean, even Elijah Moore ended up having a touchdown. So I'm assuming we're going to see a lot more of Mr. White under center for the New York Giants or New York Jets, excuse me. Then that's good for Garrett Wilson though, because huge game. And we've seen these games and this type of big playability from him before. So Garrett Wilson is a guy moving forward. If we've got White under center, we probably need to put him as a start. I was being a little bit more cautiously optimistic though this past week. Isaiah McKenzie, I had the right thought process with it. The elbow injury with Josh Allen, I said, probably not going to try to throw it deep as much. It is the Lions. Probably get some dump offs, but I went with Dawson Knox, not Isaiah McKenzie. Isaiah McKenzie ended up being the guy that really saw a lot of those intermediate targets. I talked about that in the waiver wire video as well, and he's a guy to really keep an eye on moving forward for the Buffalo Bills, because until that elbow heals up completely for Josh Allen, he's probably going to be kind of in the same repertoire in terms of his offensive scheme.
Can you spell repertoire?
Repertoire.
Can you spell it? Can you spell it?
Do I smell it?
No, can you spell it?
Oh, spell it. I thought you said, can I smell it? I was like, where is this video going?
No. I want to know if you can spell repertoire.
I can't.
I'm both disappointed and proud.
Repertoire.
I mean, I couldn't tell you, but I don't.
There's another I in there.
There's an I in there somewhere. I was just trying to.
Listen, I haven't been an educator in quite some time, so F it. Adam Thielen. I mean, who would have thought, this a game going up against the New England Patriots that really hadn't allowed like huge games to wide receivers. In fact, this was, and I read the stat and I can't find it anymore because I wanted it for this video, but essentially this was the first time in quite some time that the defense had allowed this type of big plays to multiple wide receivers and a tight end in a game. So Adam Thielen, he bounces back with the touchdown. That offense looks really good. Drake London, I put him as a start because I was like, all right, we got touchdowns in back-to-back games. This could end up being a decent matchup for him. I did warn everybody, though, be careful, because his last touchdown was 1 reception for 2 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Terry McLaurin, I mean, he's been getting so much volume, and he was close. He had like 54 receiving yards. So he just needed like another few receptions. He probably gets there. Again, another guy that so many options there. And are we going to run the football? Are we going to pass it to Antonio Gibson? Is Terry McLaurin going to be the guy? What's Taylor Heineke going to do this week? That offense is just kind of a lot of question marks every single week. And then for the tight end position, again, lots of touchdowns to guys who didn't matter this week. This misses section could have been probably 7 or 8 names longer for tight ends, but none of them were even featured on any of the slides I did last week.
Yeah.
That's how little they matter. But Hunter Henry, he has a touchdown. It's good to see it because I love Hunter Henry. He's just completely underutilized. Evan Ingram does absolutely nothing because, again, 95% of the production went to Zay Jones last week. And then Juwan Johnson, unfortunately, he ends up having a dud week as well. Was really hoping he would find the end zone, but like the rest of his Saints teammates, nobody found the end zone.
As you were mentioning that about the tight ends that nobody really knows of, I went back and looked. We got Josh Oliver, Jordan Akins, John Bates, Michael Pruitt. Yep. I mean, there's some names on there that do not belong in the top 12 of tight ends for the week for sure. Okay, Kyle, but now let's end it on a good note. Let's end it on a high note. Let's talk about some of the hits that we had, some good hits. There was a lot of them there for last week. We'll start off the quarterback position, Kirk Cousins. A lot of people were worried because it was primetime hour Kirk Cousins, and he doesn't do so well in those matchups. 30 of 37 for 299, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. A great game overall for Kirk Cousins. Trevor Lawrence looks like he matured so much in 1 week. Like, he's been playing a lot better this year. Don't get me wrong, but what we just saw from Trevor Lawrence is what a lot of people expected to see from the beginning, even though he was kind of dealt a bad deck of cards. He is growing quickly, and Trevor Lawrence is making guys like Christian Kirk and Zay Jones fantasy viable. I mean, we're not talking about they're decent. No, these guys are having huge games, and it's all because of Trevor Lawrence. He went 29 of 37 for 321, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a game-winning drive. That was fun to watch. That was fun to actually see that, man, this is what Trevor Lawrence is capable of. So that was good to see. Derek Carr had a little bit of a scare early. Looked like he was going to leave the game with a rib injury. He was in a lot of pain. Nope. He sucked it up, came back out, threw 25 of 36 for 295, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. For the running back position, James Conner, I had him ranked super high this past week. I was like, if James Conner is going to go off, now is going to be the time. He had 25 carries for 120 yards, added 3 receptions for 20 yards and a touchdown. Miles Sanders was listed as a start last week, kind of been underperforming the last month or so. He comes out and goes 21 carries for 143 yards. He was a hit. Aaron Jones. I had people telling me last week that you don't start Aaron Jones in this game right here against a Philadelphia Eagles defense. You don't do it. 99 total yards and a touchdown, played pretty freaking well. How about Josh Jacobs, though? Now, I'm only going to take, I wanted to take a partial hit here. I had him at running back 5 on the week, though. I didn't have him anywhere near high enough still, though. Over 300 total yards and 2 touchdowns for Josh Jacobs.
No. Listen. We're taking a full hit here because on both live shows, people continued to ask,
that's true.
Are we going to trust Josh Jacobs? And I repeatedly said, yes, we're starting Josh Jacobs if you own him. I did not once tell anybody to sit him, even if they said they were worried. We get full hits here.
Okay, I want to go back. Not partials. Okay, fine. I want to go back here and I want to read verbatim what the doc put in Discord about Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
This is exactly It was yesterday at 12:40 p.m. in our Dr. Ethan update tab here on Discord. It says, I've seen absolutely nothing on Josh Jacobs. The report is that it's minor and shouldn't affect his workload. Calf injuries aren't typically a play-through injury. If it's bad, he wouldn't be playing. So if he's active, I have to assume he's near his normal production. That's what the doc said prior to the game yesterday, and that is exactly what happened. He was not limited.
The
300
doc was off a
total
little
yards.
bit.
Who?
The doc was off just a little bit
How?
because he said he'd be near his normal production.
That's true. Okay.
He was quite a bit over.
He was pretty. He was way above normal. I will agree
That's
with
a
that.
good. That's a good thing to be off about.
That's
though.
right, though. We weren't sitting Josh Jacobs yesterday. Zeke Elliott, we mentioned him when we talked about Tony Pollard earlier. I said, listen, Zeke Elliott, whether you like him, whether you think he's washed, he's still a part of this offense, and he's still going to score fantasy points. Scored yet another touchdown, 16 carries for 92 yards, and that tutty. We got Cordero Patterson, who I had listed as a sit. And I do not understand the Atlanta Falcons, whether it was Kyle Pitts when he was healthy, whether it's Drake London all year long, or Cordero Patterson off and on. At least he got 14 touches this time. I don't understand why they can't figure out how to get the ball in the hands of their best playmakers more consistently. He had 71 total yards, but that was it. And then lastly, the entire backfield of the Baltimore Ravens. I said once Gus Edwards come back, this is not something you want to deal with because all three of them are going to be used. None of them scored over 10 points, and that's even with Gus finding the end zone for a touchdown. So it's not going to be pretty going forward, whether it's Justice Hill, Kenyon Drake, or Gus Edwards. It's a little bit iffy in that backfield.
Always Amari Cooper. Didn't quite have the big game that he had last week, but he still went for 80 yards. So it was one of those performances that coupled with the receptions, it was enough to just get him over. Might not win you your week, but again, he's been solid all season long. Cortland Sutton, he ended up having a really good game. I skipped Tyler Lockett there because that's just how it feels with Tyler Lockett. He's just he's so consistent at times. Yeah. Yes, there's some up and downs, but you throw him in your lineup and you know
he's a lot more consistent now than he ever used to be with Russ.
Yeah. And
old Russ, not current Russ.
It's just funny because who would have ever thought we would be saying that about Geno Smith?
Yeah, I mean,
and Russell Wilson this year.
Yeah,
but Tyler Lockett, I mean, he ends up scoring a touchdown again. And the difference between him and DK Metcalf is DK Metcalf is seeing a little bit more volume, but Tyler Lockett is putting together some bigger plays, which is really kind of what that offense used to be. Geno Smith is just being more consistent with them. Cortland Sutton, he ends up barely breaking that 10 mark, but I think that was important because he's been a guy that, yes, the Denver offense sucks and it hasn't been good, but I wanted to make sure that we mentioned Cortland Sutton because without Jerry Jeudy, he's seeing enough targets right now that if you need like a wide receiver 3 or even a wide receiver 2 and you're desperate, especially with Bye-Mageddon coming up, not this week, but the week after with 6 teams on a bye, Cortland Sutton is a guy that, yeah, he's not giving you fantasy winning numbers, but he's not really losing you a week either because you're still getting over double-digit targets. We'll continue to monitor Jerry Jeudy when he comes back. I mean, both of them are probably going to be a sit for me at that point until we see what happens. But Cortland Sutton without Jerry Jeudy is a guy that you can throw in there and be okay with. Chris Godwin finds the end zone for the second week in a row. Thank God, or second game in a row, because he's been seeing volume all season long. He just hasn't been scoring. So the good news is that he is starting to score. Zay Jones, I mean, I think it was like 134 yards, 14 targets, 11 receptions. Dude had a huge
and he looks
week.
Good.
He looks real good.
Looks really
and that's
good.
been kind of and the funny thing is when I did the waiver wire show, I was like, Zay Jones had a huge week. He's got to be highly owned. He's not. He's like barely 40% owned.
That's because it's Zay Jones. I mean, like
it is, but he's been a start multiple times for me this season. Because when he's gotten the volume, he's been fine. Like he's not like a big play guy. If he gets volume, he's going to get you the 10 points. So it's always those matchups where it's like, hey, we're going to throw it a little bit. And that was one of these matchups this past week. So Zay Jones is a guy that, hey, if Jacksonville is in a position where they're throwing it, which couldn't happen against Detroit this coming week, we got to get him in there.
Yep.
CeeDee Lamb is a fun one.
Yes,
because
it is.
This might be listen, we are not ones to go back and tell people told you so. We do every once in a while. If you come into the comments and you're super hot about something and we do, rub your face in it a little bit in terms of being right, we might come back and just say, hey, yo, we were right about this.
This is why you don't talk crap ahead of the game.
Yes.
Like, this is exactly why. It's just it's used as a learning tool, Kyle.
Yep. Yeah, it's fine to disagree. But the thread that was created by, do you remember the name, Jake? It's Cryptic.
It's something with cryptic in it.
Yeah, it's Cryptic or something like that. He started a gigantic thread where him and probably about 5 other people wanted to tell me how awful my ranking of wide receiver 18 was with CeeDee Lamb. To which I responded with, I don't know. I just think it's going to be a tougher matchup. There's some things that I'm worried about here. His ceiling for me is wide receiver 13.
And it was clearly understandable that they were just looking at the graphics and not listening to the words that were coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. As of this recording, in half PPR leagues, he's wide receiver 15 with a game to go.
But what's even more crazy about that, Kyle, that thread just magically disappeared. So somebody decided to go in there, talk some crap, and then delete it after the weekend's games.
It's Cryptic decided to delete it. Yeah. So it's Cryptic. If you are out there or anybody else that was in that thread that decided to talk crap to me, this is why you don't. You want to come in and say, hey, Kyle, I disagree, because I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. But when you're like, dude, that's insane, or you're just plain wrong, and you don't have anything to back it up, and then you end up being wrong as well. Now, I wasn't exactly right either. He still had a good game. He produced 10 fantasy points plus for his fantasy owners. And I even said that to people. I was like, I didn't end up being right about it. But the problem is I wasn't an a-hole to everybody about it either until you were to me. So, hey, just remember that. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's right. Keep that in the back of your noggin.
Treylon Burks was a sit this week. He did have that one big play, but he hasn't really, we got to get him scoring some touchdowns. Hopefully that ends up happening here with Treylon Burks and he gets going, but he's definitely fitting that AJ Brown mold where there might not be a ton of volume, but there's going to be some big plays.
Yep.
Hollywood Brown for me, a lot of people wanted to start him, and I did tell a few people to start him in the live shows if they didn't really have a lot of other options. Listed him as a sit though because I was like, I really want to see it this week. But I think moving forward, as he really starts to get back into the game flow, him and DeAndre Hopkins are going to be very good together, and you're going to start both. This week ended up being a sit. Dalton Schultz, huge Thanksgiving Day game with a couple of touchdowns. He was a start for me. Big day for him as well.
Yeah, 100%. Lots of great hits there in week 12, but now is the time where we basically close the book on week 12 and we start diving into week 13. Kyle mentioned it just a couple minutes ago. We got By-Mageddon coming up here, end of season. Not this week, but week 14.
Yep.
We got to start making some plans, y'all, to make sure you're ready to go, because that's dangerously close to fantasy football playoffs. That's actually playoffs for some leagues, which is a little bit crazy as well. But we're going to make sure you have everything that you need to go out there and be successful in fantasy football here this week. So make sure you stay tuned. Do us a favor. If you like the content, hit the like button down below. And we're still getting people subscribing to the channel, even though we're through 12 weeks of the NFL season. So that means we're doing something right. People are out there starting to really understand the game of fantasy football. And that's what this is all about, is we're trying to teach you, not just tell you. And that's what this community here is all about. But me and Kyle are going to get out of here for the day. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll talk to you later.